Don't you be beating everybody?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, Uncle my aunt Darlene. Uncle my aunt YouTube. I see somebody on YouTube as well. Uncle my aunt, everyone. Yes, yes. Alton Ogton, Facebook family. Alright, we just giving it a second to see who's gonna join us this afternoon. Alton Ogton and Curti. It's like slow going today. Like last week, it was like we turned it on. Like, damn, everybody was right there. Alton Ogton, Harmony.
You appreciate the people showing up early.
Absolutely.
What's that saying about the early bird?
The early bird catches the worm.
Yeah.
Give thanks. That's absolutely correct.
It says a lot about the character, so we appreciate all of you who are right on it at 3 o'clock as soon as we come in.
Yeah. Uncle my aunt Sekhmet. Kerhead, the light went out, so do you want to either turn this one on or you want to see why that one went out? Uncle Jasaneb, Dorothea, Uncle Ma'at Asrar. Okay, so Alton Ogton YouTube. Okay.
We'll wait about another minute, then we'll get started. Once again, appreciation for all the people that show up on time. That means a lot to us at the temple. We're strictlers when it comes to our discipline around time. We say early is on time and on time is late.
Absolutely. Yeah. Give thanks. All right, I saw Jacksonville, Florida in the YouTube. Dua for shouting out where you're joining us from. Alton Ogton, Wild Majudi Ra. Alton Ogton to Ranu. Never. Fantastic.
Wait till it gets to 20, then we'll start. That's equivalent to like half a people.
Oh, give thanks, AT Mac. I see you said that Sacred Woman Practitioner Von Sil led you here. That's what's up. Shout out to Von Sil in Cleveland, Ohio, leading people to the Temple of Anu.
Alton Ogton, Lisa Speed, Ottawa, Philadelphia.
If it ring again, just hit cancel. Okay.
Alright, I guess we might as well get started. So I want to start by saying Iyiti Imhotep and Ankh Ma'at to the first family, who is the temple of Anu, and the righteous and respectful chat up in the place. So welcome to the Crook and Flail, where we come to you with the wisdom and guidance of our ancestors, but with modern application. In the spirit of Smai Tawi, which is unity, and the vision of Suruj Tawi, which is the restoration of our tradition, the traditions of our land. So we want to start by acknowledging the righteous and respectful chat with our roll call. Ooh, I see South Africa in the place already.
And Irvington is in the building. Sinette B is here from Harlem. We got Makara in the building with representing Brick City.
The elder Armin Cow. We got half the communion up in
Yeah.
there. Breaking all types of rules.
I
of the
know,
quarantine.
right? Wearing no mask.
We all in now.
Right? All right, I see South Jersey in the house. Uncle Ma'at, Wabet Kisa.
Okay, Guyana, South America. Okay.
Duanenta, that's awesome. Duanenta for joining us, yeah. All right, where else y'all from? Did everybody chime in on the roll call?
Newcastle, Delaware.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what's up. Orange, New Jersey in the building. That's what's up. Lawrenceville, Georgia. Shout out. Alton Alton Coyote. Spartanburg. That's what's up. Yes. Yeah.
Alright, so let's go ahead.
I was just gonna say we got a few more international people today than normally, but we're grateful to connect with all of the regulars and with the new people who are here today. Columbus, Ohio, Manhattan, New York, White Plains, New York. That's what's up, guys. Give thanks, give thanks. Flushing, Queens. Yeah. All right.
Alright, so let's wanna speak to them about the orientation for the
Two.
first time Kemet class. We had one yesterday.
We did. We had one yesterday and it was really successful. So we are grateful to those of you who joined us for that orientation and got your questions answered and learned all the things that you needed to learn about the first eye class. But we did have a few people who let us know that they were unable to attend yesterday's orientation. And so we're going to hold a second orientation this coming Saturday in the afternoon. So same thing applies. If you would like to be a part of this second orientation and you didn't get a chance to be a part of the first one, send us an email to templeofanu@gmail.com. We'll make sure you get the link to the Zoom so that you can get all the information that you need about the first Ion Kemet class. And just to give you a little bit of insight to the class, you know, this class was really meant for people who are beginning their walk in this Kemetic legacy and they want to understand, like, what is this about? What are your spiritual beliefs? How do you worship? What is the history of this tradition? You know, just understanding those things. That's our foundation, right? The first Ion Kemet class is our foundation. First Ion Kemet is also a mandatory course for anyone who seeks to be an initiated member or citizen of the Temple of Anu. So you start your initiation journey by taking first Ion Kemet and then you move through to the next phase. So again, whether it is that you've taken classes before and you're just looking now to be a part of a spiritual community, village, and nation, or you have no background in a legacy and you want some insight and information to help you make a decision about whether or not this tradition is for you, the first Ion Kemet class is for that audience. Okay, so if you're interested in being a part of the orientation, which you can attend free of charge, there's no obligation to attend orientation. You attend orientation and then you make a decision about whether or not you want to move forward with the course. So orientation is at no obligation at all. Just shoot us an email to templeofanu@gmail.com. Let us know that you'd like that Zoom link and then we'll make sure you get that. Asrar, you said, what time will the orientation be? I don't think we set a time yet, but we did it at 4 yesterday. We did it at 4 yesterday, so I think we're aiming for about the same time this coming Saturday, so about 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay?
And we're in a time, like, not to rush you, but we have a philosophy called Kim, keep energy moving.
Yeah.
So we're trying to move more precisely as the years go by. So we're trying to start early as July. So you don't have too much time to sit on it. So, you know, meditate on it, go to your ancestors about it, but try to be there Saturday because I don't think there'll be another orientation after that. We're going to proceed on. So we already had a bunch of people sign up yesterday. So we're just trying to make sure we got a solid group as we go forward so we can get everybody on their journey.
Yeah, and we know that there are some of you who are interested who, again, didn't get to attend orientation yesterday, maybe still have questions. We want to make sure those questions are answered and you have all the information you need to make a decision about what's right for you. So that's, you know, why we want to hold another orientation, so people can get on board.
That's right.
Yeah. Give thanks.
All right, so, you know, we want to start off today's discussion. I received an article yesterday. We got to speak about the COVID update. So what's going on with us as a community and what's going on with us as a world. So it says, as of May 31st, 2020, it says, new coronavirus losing potency. Top Italian doctor says. So this article is from Rome. The new coronavirus is losing its potency and has become much less lethal, a senior Italian doctor said on Sunday. That's last Sunday. In reality, the virus clinically no longer exists in Italy. You heard that? Mm-hmm. It says clinically it no longer exists in Italy, and it almost decimated Italy. I think like 5,000 people was dying a day at one point.
Yeah, it was bad.
In Milan, in the northern region of Lombardy, which has borne the brunt of Italy's coronavirus contagion. The swabs that were performed over the last 10 days showed a viral load in quantitatively smaller terms that was absolutely infinitesimal compared to the ones carried out a month ago or 2 months ago, he told RAI television. Italy has the third highest death toll in the world from COVID-19 with 33,415 dying. And since the outbreak came into light on February 21st, it has the sixth highest global tally of cases at 233,019. However, new infections and fatalities have fallen steadily in May, and the country is unwinding some of the most rigid lockdown restrictions introduced anywhere on the continent. Sangrillo said some experts were too alarmist about the prospect of a second wave of infections, and politicians needed to take into account the new reality. What is the new reality? He said, we've got to get back to being a normal country, he said. Someone has to take responsibility for terrorizing the country. That's strong language. He said someone has to take responsibility for terrorizing the country. So now that kind of sparks into the thought of the conspiracy theorists about people that didn't think that it was a natural thing, that he used the word terrorizing the country. Pending scientific evidence to support the thesis that the virus has disappeared. Let me go back. He said the government urged caution. So the doctor is bringing this information out, but the government is slow to believing it. So the government and the medical association over there is not necessarily on the same page. Right. The government urged caution, saying it was far too soon to claim victory, pending scientific evidence to support the thesis that the virus has disappeared. I would invite those who say they are sure of it not to confuse the Italians, said Sandra Zampa, undersecretary at the health ministry, said in a statement. We should instead invite Italians to maintain the maximum caution, maintain physical distancing, avoid large groups, to frequently wash their hands, and to pretty much continue doing what it is that we're doing. So they're pretty much not buying it. However, a second doctor from northern Italy told the national ANCA news agency that he also seeing the coronavirus as weakening. The strength the virus had 2 months ago is not the same strength it has today, said Matteo Bassetti. You heard that? Matteo Bassetti. Who is Bassetti?
Bastet.
Who is she associated with?
Sekhmet.
Sekhmet. One of her attributes is the bringer of pestilences. So here you have, we're going by the principle of correspondence. So here you have someone named Matteo Bassetti, who is the head of infectious diseases. You see the correspondence going on there. The head of infectious diseases. So Basset, Hetero, and Sekhmet represents the bringer of pestilence, as well as the bringer of healing. So
Right.
the Sunus, the doctors, the naturopaths, the healers were always priests of Sekhmet. The head of infectious diseases clinic at San Martino Hospital in the city of Genoa said, "It is clear that today the COVID-19 disease is different." So it's hidden different. So how come, as big as United States say they are, how come they always be behind the cutting edge when it comes to technology or when it comes to health technology? So here we are, this thing affected China. So down there like a month and a half ago, China said it was clear of the virus for the most part. So now, remember, it was decimating the Chinese when we thought it was just a Chinese thing. Then it hit Italy. It was decimating Italy. Now Italy's saying it's dang near non-existent. Just last week or 2 weeks ago, remember Madagascar came up with the COVID-19. They called their tea or whatever, this tonic, the COVID-19 thing. And so still no news from America. They don't want to address it. Mm-hmm. So now it's over here. Remember we all thought we was almost immune to the COVID a couple months ago. Now it seems to be primarily affecting African Americans. Now all of a sudden the country wants to open back up. So, oh, this is killing black folks. Don't worry about it. So in light of all that, so now in light of COVID in the backdrop, now the situation with George Floyd and what's the other sister name? It's so many names I can't even keep up no more. So in light of that, so now we have these protests that's now national, almost becoming international at this point. So the country is in unrest. The country is unstable, more unstable than it's ever been, at least in our lifetimes. So what do we say to that? We say, welcome to being black in America. That's everyday life for black folks. So we was already dying of high blood pressure, diabetes, black on black crime, police brutality. So now we got this thing. So now we're out voicing our opinion. So we're no longer holding the rage inside. So we're no longer going to be depressed about it. So now we're forcing the conversation on the world stage now about all of this stuff. So last week, to be honest, like I just got information about it like the day before I spoke about it last week. So we've had a week to further process what's going on. And this stuff is serious. There was TV shows canceled because they wanted to talk about this thing. So it's now a world discussion in its own right. So we came to the conclusion about justifiable anger. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? What does justifiable anger mean for spiritual people? And I know you said you had some thoughts about it. You want to share?
Let me jump into that. Yeah, so, some of this is going to be reminiscent of some of the things that Naswt spoke about last week at Communion. So I still want to encourage those of you who did not watch last week's video to make sure you catch up on the conversation. But I wanted to dive back into it because, as Naswt said, the conversation around these protests and the conversation around what is happening in our world continues to be extremely important, extremely necessary. So like right now, it's not something that we can move on from. Like we can't talk about something else. We have to talk about this. This is the most pressing matter for us to discuss right here and now. So to start, I think many of us are very familiar with, different passages from the 42 laws of Ma'at, and even from, the selections from the Hosea, etc., that actually sound as though they speak out against anger. Like we talked about last time, the 42, one of the laws of Ma'at that says, I have not allowed myself to become angry without just cause. I do not allow myself to become a person of anger. I do not allow myself to utter fiery words, right? And so when you have admonishments like this, it sounds like we as spiritual people have a requirement to not be angry, right? Like that's what it sounds like it's saying. So then how do we as righteous people or as spiritual warriors allow any allowance whatsoever for anger? And I think that the answer to that is found in our Kemetic proverb that says that emotions make for poor masters but good servants. So I think that there's a significant difference that we have to discuss with regards to the nature of anger, right? When you have anger that is chaotic, that anger is the master of you. And as we just said, emotions make poor masters, right? So anger that is the master of you is the anger that causes you to act without thinking. Anger that is the master of you causes you to do things that you're going to regret. Anger that is the master of you will cause you to do things that are unproductive. Anger that's the master of you will cause you to do things that are destructive. Anger that is the master of you will cause you to act against your own self-interests. Anger that is the master of you will cause you to lose sight of, like, you can't think straight, you can't get centered, you can't breathe correctly, you can't get your balance back, you can't act with any wise judgment or superior decision making skills, because anger that is the master of you takes over you, and everything that you do comes from anger, and everything that you see is red, and every word that you speak is fiery, and now the anger that is the master of you is in control of you. But the anger that is a good servant is the anger that is going to propel you forward, right? That is what we're talking about when we talk about just anger. When we talk about just anger and justified anger, we're talking about the anger that actually serves you, the anger that motivates you, the anger that pushes you forward, the anger that helps you with driving you into the realization of your highest reality. Right? So at the end of the day, if your anger is not actually keeping you on track, then that anger needs to be checked. It needs to be checked. It needs to be stopped. If your anger is helping you to push you forward, then that can be seen as justified anger. So why anger is necessary at a moment like this is because in order for us to make and affect the kind of change in the world that we want to affect, we have to have the ability to be motivated and driven to actually change. When we're apathetic, when we're like relaxed and we're okay with accepting the status quo and we're not motivated and we're not driven, how do we make change in the world? How do we push things forward? How do we make sure that the world is reshaped and remade into our image unless we are driven to do the work? So anger that is your servant drives you to do the work, and it helps you to do work on two different levels, on the physical level and on the spiritual level. So over the last couple of weeks, we've talked a lot about the physical level. We've talked about the protests. We've talked about changing things in government. We've talked about voting in local elections so that you are now voting for your police chief and your police sheriff. You're voting for your mayor. You're voting for the council people. You're voting for the school board. You're making sure that the people who run your city and run your town are allocating funding to schools instead of to the police force. You're making sure that the judges that get put on the bench are going to be motivated to prosecute and to punish the police officers who commit crimes against citizens. You're making sure that the sheriff is invested in your agenda. You're making sure the mayor is invested in your agenda. You're organizing around petitions. You're organizing around economic boycotts. That's how we affect change on the physical plane. But there's still spiritual work that needs to be done as well, right? Because just like Naswt said last week, everything that exists externally is a symptom of the internal imbalance. And so if we don't do the work to cultivate ourselves internally and cultivate who we are, and then cultivate our power and our internal strength and our internal balance, then we don't have the strength and the power and the capacity to reshape the world in our image. So the spiritual work must still be done. The spiritual work must be done first, quite frankly, must be done first. Then you go to the protest, then you come home and you do more spiritual work. Like, you don't just protest, you don't just shout and make your demands loud. You also get your ancestors behind your demands. You get the spirit guides that walk with you behind your demands. You get yourself and your community behind your demands. If you're a part of the Temple of Anu, or you're a part of another spiritual community, you all can come together to work together to do the spiritual work that needs to be done to set intentions and to make changes happen on the physical plane. So you shift things spiritually, and then you allow what you've shifted in the spirit realm to manifest itself into the physical realm, right? That's the work that has to be done. So there's two things that we need in order to make changes spiritually, and the first thing that we need is specificity. Like, specificity is the key to making things happen on the spiritual plane. And this is something that I repeat over and over and over to people who want to do spiritual work, because I get people who come to me all the time and they are like, I want to invoke abundance. Can I get an abundance candle? Can I get an abundance spiritual bath? This is my favorite example. I always talk about money. People are like, I want to invoke money. I want more money in my life. And then I'll be like, well, how did you ask for money before? And they'd be like, I just asked the ancestors to bring me money. And then I was walking down the street and I found $5. I'm like, then the ancestors brought you money. Right? And they're like, but I needed more than $5. But did you ask for more than $5? You did not ask for more than $5. You just said, ancestors, please bless me with money. And the ancestors blessed you with $5. So you need to be grateful. You owe the ancestors some gratitude. Now, if you wanted more than $5, if you wanted $500 or you wanted $5,000, then you should have been specific about what you wanted. You should have went to the altar and said, I need $500. I need $5,000. I need it in this number of days. I need it to come in this number of ways. If I am starting a business, then I don't just need $5,000 to rain out of the sky. I would like the $5,000 to be commitments to my business. I would like $5,000 in subscriptions. I would like $5,000 in sales. I would like $5,000 in new customers. Whatever that looks like for your business. So specificity is key. And that's the same for any type of spiritual work that you're doing. If you have a goal that you want to accomplish, you don't just go and say, like, I would like to accomplish something. You say, like, no, I would like to write a book. And my book is going to be on this subject. I would like to publish it in 2 years. I need to have it illustrated. It's going to be a children's book. I need to have the cover design. I need to sell it for $15.99. I need to sell it to 20,000 people. If you don't have specificity, then your goal is inadequate, because you don't even know what you're trying to accomplish. And the same goes for the changes we're trying to make with these protests. We're going out in the streets and we're protesting. We're like, we want to see change. And then the question is, well, what change? Like, well, we just think things should be different. Like, no, be specific, because things will be different, but they may not be different the way you want them to be different. Right. They may not be different the way that we demand them to be different. But the only way we can determine how they will become, or what the world will be shaped into, is if we are specific with our demands and specific with our intentions. So it is our specificity as individuals. Then once you have a specific goal, then you have the emotions behind the goal. And that is the power that makes the intention intense. The intensity behind the intention, when you go into your spiritual work, also propels the spiritual work. It also advances the spiritual work. It pushes it out into the universe. It's backed by your energy. If you're doing it with a community or with a collective, it's backed by the community energy. It's backed by the energy of the collective. It's backed by the energy of your ancestors. It's backed by the energy of the Neteru. So it's not just the intensity of, like, well, I would like $5. Like, that's not intense. There's no emotion behind that. You have to want it. You have to desire it. You have to be driven. You have to be motivated. That is how you use emotions as good servants, okay? So what are some of the things that you can be doing right now to drive your emotions? To drive your goals, to drive your goals and to drive your intentions forward. So certainly, you want to raise energy first and foremost. You raise energy through things like yoga and through things like Hesi or chanting, right? Those physical movements, Hesi, chanting, dancing, those are things that build the personal power and build energy within you. So once you have that energy built from engaging in those disciplines regularly, then you channel and direct that intensity and that energy through your ritual work. And that ritual work would be meditation and visualization. You would direct it through ancestral offerings and offerings to the Neteru. You would direct it through personal affirmations and prayers or spiritual invocations, because I know some people don't like prayers when it comes to African spirituality. They like, the Netru exists within me, so I'm not praying to the Netru. It's fine. It's a spiritual invocation, but that's still a way that you direct your intention specifically and with intensity. Is through those affirmations and through those prayers and through those words, right? Through the meditations, through that altar work, through the visualizations, okay, and the offerings. So ultimately, as we think about these protests and as we think about what's happening in the world, what's going on in the world, we have to acknowledge that in order to change the world, we are responsible for evolving the self. That's our responsibility. We can't change the world if we don't first change the self, if we don't first work on ourselves. Because if we're chaotic within, if we are uncentered, if we're imbalanced, if we are uncertain, if we are insecure, if we are troubled, whatever energy we carry, we're going to perpetuate that into the world. We're going to perpetuate it, we're going to create it, we're going to maintain it, we're going to attract it. So we can't expect for the world to shift unless we've shifted.
True.
That's our charge as spiritual warriors. Again, we could be out here doing these protests and be out in the streets and doing the petitions and etc. But as spiritual warriors, we also have the responsibility to be stewards of our energy, to keep ourselves aligned to the light, to keep our vibration high, to keep our frequency high, to make sure that we are a reflection of the world in which we seek to create. That's our responsibility. So when you hear, us in the Temple of Anu talking about personal accountability and talking about developing the selves and making sure you do your duo every day, your worship ceremony every day, and making sure you do your daily prayers and you feed your ancestors daily, we're not ignoring the real work that has to happen in the streets. But if we don't do the work in the house, then the work in the streets is for nothing. If you don't do the spiritual work at the altar, then the work in the streets is not as effective as it can be or as it should be. And we're going to keep generation after generation having to be out in these streets because we didn't do the work at the altar in the house like we could have did, like we should have did, like we were supposed to do. Right? So the goal here is to make sure that the work that's happening to shift the world is actually shifting the world and making a significant difference in the world so that our children and our children's children don't have to keep fighting the same fight. So we have to be clear, what's the goal? What's the intention? What does it look like for the world to change to the way we want it to be? And then we put our energy and our intensity, we direct the anger that we feel, the frustration that we feel, the motivation behind everything we've ever been motivated for on this front. We allow that to be directed into our spiritual work so that it propels our intention, and that intention becomes a seed that is then planted in the universe, and that seed can take root and can grow from there. Okay? I want to share. Oh, you have the Lucy. I handed it to you. Hand it back. I want to share two passages actually from the Lucia. The first one is on page 43, which is the writings of our ancestor Ptah-Hotep, and it says, "Those of great heart are the chosen of Neter, but those who obey base desires become the possession of the enemy." So again, those who are of great heart, those who are courageous, those who know how to direct the will, those who know how to direct the personal power, those who know how to take their emotions and use them in service of their greater goals and in service of their greater intentions, those who live in alignment with their purpose, those who live in alignment with their higher truths, those who try to stay in tune, and keep themselves balanced. Those are the chosen of Neter. Those are the ones, when we look at them, we see reflections of Neter in those people because they're doing the work, because they're allowing their heart to propel their spiritual work so that they are reflections of divinity in that. But if you're obeying your base desires, if you are succumbing to what people call the lower self, you're allowing anger to overtake you, you're allowing frustration to overtake you, you're allowing, like you're feeling like I can never make a difference. There's nothing I do is ever gonna make a difference, and so you stop trying and you stop trying to be better. You stop cultivating the self. You succumb to lust. You succumb to greed. You succumb to these qualities that are not of divinity. You become the possession of the enemy. You can be controlled by others. You can be controlled by others. Others can push you and pull you and use you, and however they choose to, because you don't control yourself. Those base desires control you, and if those base desires can control you, then you can be used. And I think that's also important at a time like this for us to keep in mind too, because sometimes people will be out here saying things about the mission that we have as far as African liberation, as far as defeating racism, as far as stopping police brutality, as far as seeking justice for African people. And they try to co-opt our mission by being like, this is the way I think your mission should be. This is what I think the resolution of your mission should be. And we need to watch out for that. If we are so emotional that we're not thinking clearly, then they can co-opt our mission. And they can tell us what we should be asking for or what we should be wanting, or they can tell us that what they have to give us is what we're asking for. We have to be self-mastered. We have to be true of thought, word, and deed. We have to be clear so that we know what we're seeking when we see it, and we know when someone's trying to trick us too. We cannot allow ourselves to be possessions of our enemy. Our enemy does not mean us the best good at this point in time. We know this, and this has been true for a long, long time. So we cannot allow ourselves to be controlled. We cannot, like, as African people, if we want this African liberation on a global scale, succumbing to our base desires is the last thing that we have room to do. We do not have room to do it. We cannot be comfortable doing it. Simple as that. We can't be comfortable doing it. So we have to think about, talk about economic boycotts and economic empowerment. We got to be like, I guess we got to let go of the liquor stores, guys, in the community, because we need those physical buildings so that we can have Black-owned businesses in the community, so that we can have stores and shops and restaurants and things like that. We can stop going to Target and stop going to Red Lobster and stop supporting these corporations, because we've increased the number of Black-owned businesses right here in the community, and we've gotten rid of the businesses in the community that don't mean Black people any good. But we allow ourselves to keep being controlled, and we let them be like, I swear we do have your best interest in heart, and we don't think about our own best good and our own highest good.
That's right.
The other one that I want to read is on page 59. It's from our ancestor Amenemope, and this one's kind of long, but I'm gonna read it, and then I'm gonna break it down little by little. Now the unrestrained man or woman in the temple is like a tree grown in unfertile ground. Its leaves wither quickly, and its unripe fruit falls to the earth. It reaches its end in the lumber yard, or it is floated far from its place, and its burial cloth becomes a flame of fire. But the self-mastered man or woman sets himself or herself apart. He or she is like a tree grown in fertile ground. It grows green and doubles its yield of fruit. It has its place in the eyes of its owner. Its fruit is sweet, its shade is pleasant, and its end is reached in the garden. So we're setting up here in this dialogue the distinction between being self-mastered and being unself-mastered, being unrestrained, right? So the unrestrained person is a tree grown in infertile ground. If you are in infertile ground, you cannot grow anything. You cannot grow. You cannot produce. You cannot magnify. You cannot have abundance. You cannot have prosperity. You cannot have the great things that you want to achieve or give birth to or create in this world, because the ground that you are rooted in is not even fertile. So right from the root, you are corrupt. There is no way that you get what you want. There is no way that you have what you're seeking, because from the ground up, you are corrupted. And so what happens to you when it's talking about its leaves wither quickly and its unripe fruit falls to the earth, it reaches its end in the lumber yard, or it is floated far from its place. Its burial cloth becomes a flame of fire. It's essentially saying this tree is only good for one purpose. Its tree is only good for firewood. This tree is only good for lumber. We can't even let this tree keep growing. We have to uproot this tree and burn this tree. Like this tree cannot even continue to be allowed to exist because like anybody who's an actual agriculturalist, like we're spiritual agriculturalists, but if you're an actual agriculturalist and you plant things, you know that if you allow stuff in your garden to wither, that it can corrupt the other plants in the garden, right? It can create disease for other plants. It can spread problems to other plants. So you can't even let it stay because you don't want to allow those things to happen to the rest of your garden. In order to protect the garden, you got to uproot the problem. So you as the unrestrained man or woman, if we allow you to be a part of our community and just let you wreak havoc on our community, you could take us all down. You could be a problem for all of us. Well, none of us will ever be able to do or get anything of what we're seeking if we allow unrestrained men and women to represent us, to wreak havoc in our communities, to set the agenda, and to have their way, right? But the self-mastered man or woman sets him or herself apart. He or she is like a tree grown in fertile ground, growing green and doubling its yield of fruit, so you're able to produce. Every time a seed is planted in you, it brings forth fruit. It brings forth a yield. You are able to bring forth your wildest dreams. You are able to create life. You are able to sustain life. You are able to make your dreams come true, make your goals come true. You have the capacity because you are fertile and you are in fertile ground. So that's the epitome of health, right? Like that's a demonstration of health. It has its place in the eyes of its owner, who is a better word would be creator. Who is our creator? Netzer is our creator, right? So the Netzer and the Netzeru and the ancestors look down upon us with warmth and with joy and with happiness when they see us being self-mastered. They are pleased with our self-mastery. That is what allows us to live in alignment with our creator and with all of creation, right? Is that we are self-mastered and we demonstrate a measure of discipline that allows us to be productive, that allows us to be healthy, and that allows us to shine and to thrive. Its fruit is sweet, its shade is pleasant, and its end is reached in the garden. So again, we're able to thrive, we're able to produce, our community will grow. We will grow as people through self-mastery. We will grow as people by being specific with our intentions and then direct with the intensity behind that and how it is that we build, channel, and direct our energy in our spiritual work. So going back to the top, like anger that is justified must be used in order for it to be worthwhile to the spiritual warrior. If we are just angry, then it is of no value to us. But if we are angry and we can direct that intensity into the accomplishment and the realization of our goals, then we have the capacity to actually be who it is that we're here to be and do what it is that we as spiritual warriors say that we're here to do. So there's nothing, I shouldn't say there's nothing wrong with anger. There's nothing wrong with justified anger. And it's up to us as spiritual people to know the difference between when our anger is just and justified, when it is in alignment with Ma'at, and when it is chaotic anger that seeks to destroy us. And as self-mastered men and women, once we understand the difference, then the anger that is chaotic, we transmute that. We release that. We walk away from that. We do not indulge in that. Right? But the anger that is justified is a motivator. It is a push that the universe gives us to help us to accomplish what we're here to do. Okay? And we do that work spiritually and in the physical plane. We have to do both, or else we're not spiritual warriors. If we're just doing one or the other, if you're just doing the spiritual work but you're not affecting change in the world, you're not properly motivated and driven. Because even when you take stuff to your altar, you still got to go out and, or you say you want to start a business, you still got to look for locations. You got to start a wholesale account. You got to get a bank account. You got to, you understand what I'm saying? There's still steps in the world that have to be taken. And the same goes if you go out to start a business. You can't just go get a loan and go find a location. You also have to do your prayers, get your ancestors in order, do the divination, make sure the Netzeru approve of your plans, make sure the Netzeru approve of the timing of your plans, etc. So there's still work. The proper context for us as spiritual warriors is that we do both. that we have a proper marriage between the work that's done on the physical plane and the work that's done in the spiritual plane. So I just wanted to encourage you guys, as you are going out there and raising your voices in these protests, out in these streets, because I know here in New Jersey, in the next couple of days, I feel like there's like a protest in East Orange, there's one in Elizabeth, there's one in Newark, like they all over the place. And it's not stopping, and that's good, because again, we need that intensity. You can't be like, I believe in this thing, and then you drop it the next day. How meaningful is that? That's not the intensity and the passion and the drive that we're talking about here. If you're driven and you're motivated and it's intense for you and it's meaningful for you, then it is a cause and it is a purpose that you carry with you nonstop, right? So it's important that these protests continue, and then you come home and you take it to the altar and you say, this is our vision for tomorrow, and I use my spiritual intensity and integrity to make that vision come to fruition. So that's what I had to talk about. That's it. That was it.
Crook and Flail over.
Drop the tuning for it. Like Carol said, classes in session, so you can stop guessing.
I like that.
Like Curtis said it best. She said, teach him that. You got the chat silent today. So
I know that felt more like a communion, but it was what I had in my mind, so it was what I needed to share.
Okay, so you want to look at?
Yeah, you want to? Okay.
I don't think it's much. I think a lot of it is just,
I see from Wild Majudi Radua for this analysis. I think that activists and activism have long held the belief that actions are needed to affect change, but there is little thought on personal shift and transformation occurring first. I appreciate that, Wild Majudi Ra. And I think that I think we've spoken about this before a little bit, because we've talked about, like, what if we, as African people, divest from America and divest from the white power structure and form our own country, our own nation, our own state, and then what do we bring with us? Like, what's the energy that we bring with us? Are we still gonna have to deal with some of our worst qualities and some of our bad selves as we bring that with? So we cannot create in our minds this mythological utopia that, like, once we as Black people get together, then all of the problems just go away. Like, that's not real. Not unless there's personal shift and personal transformations that happen. Total freedom, justice, equality, and independence for all in the matriarch too. I appreciate that as a time to take control and manifest our divinity too. I'm gonna check there in a second. More money without increasing your stress or time or diminishing quality of life, right? Yeah, see, that's how you gotta be specific when you talk about setting your goals. You gotta be like, I need more money and I don't want to have to work harder for it, which means I need a raise, or I need my business to pop off, or I need, right? Like, because you could be like, I need more money, and then they'd be like, you gotta work 10 more hours this week. Like, well, you're gonna get more money, but now you're also gonna be exhausted. Like, so again, specificity when it comes to spiritual work is key, because otherwise it'll come to you. It just may not come the way you wanted it to, but if you don't ask for it or set that intentions and plant that seed with the specific intentions that you want or that you visualize, then you're going to, like, it'll just come however it come, you know? Let me see.
Let me just put some closure on the justify anger. So, as Hemet said, there's plenty of reasons that we have for justify anger. However, as spiritualists of the highest caliber, that's what we claim we are, it doesn't mean you get to indulge in destruction. So justify anger, she said, must be transmuted and transmitted into something positive and beneficial for everybody. So as spiritualists, sometimes we feel like that's a very high charge, but isn't that the point of spirituality, is to give you a high charge? It is to contrast you from just everyday normal thinking. So the fact is, you always have a choice. You always have a choice as a spiritualist. You could walk away, you could choose to deal with things in all types of creative ways, but what I'm seeing is we don't always like the choices that we have on the table. And so we tend to throw emotional tantrums because we don't like the choices. But the point in life is to always have choices. So we have to now ask ourselves, are we spiritual people? Meaning, are you peaceful and peaceable by nature? And that you have these spiritual tools to affect a necessary and positive change into the world? Or are you just an angry person and you need all these spiritual tools and these rituals to calm you down?
Right.
Because somewhere deep inside you might think being peaceful or spiritual is weak. So therefore you're always trying to find some excuse for justified anger and lead with your anger. At the end of the day, right is still right and wrong is still wrong. For instance, killing is still wrong no matter what. So we always tend to look at justified ways of killing. Well, what about this? Or what about if I have to kill for this? Or what is that thing they called so that person's supposed to be on community.
Right?
So one person is not on community. I thought our whole community is. So we was talking about like manslaughter. So if you get into a car accident and someone dies, so yeah, you're exonerated, but that incident changes you forever. You might have to kill someone in self-defense. Killing is still wrong, whether it's self-defense or not. That thing still will change you forever.
Yeah.
So here we are, we're in the middle of this protest. People are angry. They have justified anger. In their justified anger, it may get you contemplating doing some things you know is against your highest good. So what is the point of the message is, what do they say? If you can't do the time, then don't do the crime.
Right.
So yes, you have justified anger and you can do anything you want. You always have choices, but if you indulge, know the cost before you indulge.
Yeah.
Because the cost could cost you your peace of mind for the rest of your days of your lives.
Yeah.
So this reminds me of the metaphor of a Shaolin monk. I came up watching Kung Fu movies. I always was fascinated by the idea of a Shaolin monk. So here you have these guys trained like 8 hours a day in martial arts, which is really trained in violence. You're trained in this deadly art. They have like 18 different weapons, but yet these people never have excuse to use this martial arts. They use it as a form of energy cultivation and to control their body, their mind, and their spirit. These people have developed their bodies to the point where they have a metaphor that says, be like cotton wrapped in steel. So you're so thorough inside, and yes, you have flesh, but you're thorough because your internal work. So these monks build up their body to the point where their skill set is not for them, because their spirit reality that they create from their meditation and their world philosophy and their paradigm doesn't magnetize these negative experiences to them. So the skill set that they've trained themselves to be deadly at or for is usually for someone else, usually for the helpless. And if you were to try to damage or harm one of them, you can actually hurt yourself. They're so thorough and so trained that what they do, if you punch them, you probably hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And that's a proper metaphor for us as spiritualists, what we're supposed to be striving for. We need to be that solid in our spiritual practice that you shift, change, and transform the energy in the room to your advantage. Especially those of us on the path that's been claiming 5, 10, 15 years in your spiritual art. You should have that power to shift and change and transform the energy of the room. So if you're out there, you want to protest, you should have the power to shift, change, and transform the energy of that event, or at least in your circumference. And one of the texts says, the wise are a school for the noble. No evil takes place when he or she is around.
Yes.
That's a powerful energy. So how is that possible? We can use the Neteru Jehuti. Jehuti is the Neter that's the personification of articulate thought, word, and speech. So Jehuti means having a masterful mouthpiece. Jehuti means having the art of persuasion. So if you're out there, if that's what you want to do you have the art of persuasion? Could a word that you say out your mouth stop negativity and violence in its tracks? Could something be about to come off or pop off your way and you say something to persuade them and they go another way? Not that you want it to go to the other way, but it's the principle of frequency. You can control what's going on in your surroundings. What about the principle of Haru? Are you fit? Do you have some type of charisma? Do you have some type of energetic energy about you. Haru makes you un-F-wittable. Y'all understand what I'm saying? Haru is that energy. What about your energy and your charisma makes you unmess-wittable? And spiritually, you might just need your juju. See Jehudi for your juju. One of the texts says, he or she who is self-mastered, the harsh are kinder to them than their own mothers. That's the goal of a spiritualist. You don't want to ever have to punch nobody in the face or have to lift up a weapon, but you can be trained in them things just in case someone else is dealing with a power that's stronger than yours. But the goal is to be so self-mastered that you could get people that are normally mean and hard-spirited to be nice and bow down to you, because you become the superior energy on the force, the supreme energy on the force.
Right.
Or on the scene. So if we're getting involved with these things, we have to be strategic once again. Some people question spiritualists. Some people just want everybody doing the same thing, and that's not strategic. There are certain people that's supposed to be on the front line. You're not supposed to have the healers on the front line. If the healers get damaged, hurt, killed, or in jail, then you hit. The healers need to be to the side, ready to do triage, physically, spiritually, or whatever. The spiritualists are not supposed to be on the front line. The elders are not supposed to be on the front line. The elders and the spiritualists and the healers are supposed to be to the side, serving as counsel and serving as advisors to the whole situation. Because you might need to come see the spiritualist and the healer to get that juju. Remember, we're technical support to people who don't want to be on this high path. Right. So we're technical, so you might have to come through and get that juju. You might have to come through and get that spiritual wash to get your energy right. You might need to come through to find out what prayers that it is that you need to do so you can walk fortified with the armor of your netters and your neteru. Because at the essence of all of this, we have to start realizing that this is spiritual warfare at the essence. And by the time that something happens on the physical plane, it's already happened energetically and spiritually. So strategically, we have to deal with things spiritually first.
I want to look at some of the YouTube comments. Let me just go back up here.
The Magi warriors practice a martial art known as Mantu and Kemet. True, we call it the Mantu arts instead of the martial arts.
So we got too low a fire will not smelt the iron. Too high a fire can burn the house down with you. And I'm saying that because I also saw your comment about Sekhmet being a healing entity. But that what you said, that mantra is true for Sekhmet. Too high of a fire will not smelt the iron. Will burn the house down. Too low of a fire will not smelt the iron. So Sekhmet is the healing fires that must be kept in proper measure, right, at all times. Because what we know about Sekhmet is that if not kept in proper measure, that Sekhmet energy can be destructive. That Sekhmet energy can be problematic. That Sekhmet energy could take you out, and you could be like, Sekhmet, heal my life by removing the things in my life that are a problem. And Sekhmet be like, all right, then I'm gonna take away your house and your car and your job. And you're like, oh, that's not I ain't know I was gonna be homeless. And Sekhmet's like, you said take away everything that's a problem.
Take you
I'm gonna just take you out because you the problem in your life, right? So we gotta, again, we talked last time and we talked today about the importance of Jehudi, right? And how Jehudi represents the divine wisdom to keep things in proper measure. Jehuti represents the ability to temper that energy of Sekhmet so that Sekhmet's fire is used properly. So there's no reason for us to be afraid of Sekhmet. We just have to understand the proper balance and the proper measure of Sekhmet. We have to understand how to use Sekhmet at the right time in the right way. And Jehudi helps as a complement to Sekhmet in terms of accomplishing that. And shameless plug, the Netta Relationships Workshop on Sekhmet is coming up in August. So check out our events page if you would like more information and insight on how it is that we work with Sekhmet in the Temple of Anu. But just to address that comment, okay? And then there was another one here. I can hear the chants outside now from the protests. I'm directing that energy to motivate my intellectually based work towards Black liberation too. Right. Absolutely, yes. All right. We got a question also about the phrase, we are not our ancestors, that's been going around. Can we speak on how the ancestral spirit is tied to revolution and progress? And Maakra apparently dislikes that phrase a lot because she said so like 8 times.
It's the internet.
It's okay.
Phrase?
We are not our ancestors.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try to get into that in a few minutes.
Okay.
Who be saying that? Christians?
No, other black people.
A lot of black people have been saying that recently. Like I've seen a lot of posters online saying like, we are not our ancestors, we will beat you up. I'm like, our ancestors beat people up. Like, what you talking about? You know, so yeah, there's
different classes of ancestors.
Yeah. Okay, you want to keep going or you want to see what's on Facebook chat?
I think just go through it real quick.
Okay.
I think people are just
We got from the Hosea, page 32. Do not rob, rather act against the robber. If you turn away from violence, who will punish wrongdoing? To me, this defines when violence is necessary.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then a question about how do you feel?
Does that
Go
mean
ahead.
Majudy is one of them cats looking for justified?
He's like, so when can we get an end
like,
though?
I found one that said I could be mad.
So I could beat up the robbers then, right? How do you feel about voting versus not voting? Should we settle for anything? What are things people can still do for that change? As I've said a few times and will continue to say, I'm actually more and more as I've gotten older, felt more inclined to the influence that we can have on local elections versus putting all of our focus and emphasis on the national presidential elections. So I think that is a mistake for us, not just as African people, but for people in America whatsoever, to put a lot of energy into the presidential election. There's a lot that we cannot influence on that front. And there's also the president of the country, while they have a great deal of influence, the way that the country is set up with the fact that we have a state legislature, we have county legislation, we have city legislation, we have the congressmen, we have the Supreme Court, and we have a full judicial system. The limits of the president were meant to be checked so that the president cannot act as a king. That's the intention behind like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and things like that. So
we saw that with Barack, his hands was tied
right.
for 8 years.
Well, part of the 8 years, or most of the 8 years actually, because you had a pretty Republican Congress, and therefore it made it very difficult for him to just like go willy nilly and do things. Not that he necessarily was going to go willy nilly. That's a debate for another day. But the point is that the presidential powers are checked. So when we want to affect things that are going to affect our little community, like how is the money being allocated to the school, and how is the school going to use that money, and how much money from the city budget is being allocated to the police, and how is the police using that budget, and who determines, what money goes into after school programs, and who determines whether or not there's resources for a community center for the kids, and who determines how much money goes into sports programs versus reading programs. Like all those questions are answered on a city level, on a local level, and we don't put enough, as a nation, we don't put enough attention into like local elections and making sure we have the right local officials in place. So more and more, I actually think ignoring the presidential election is probably okay to go, but it's probably not okay for us to not be active and cognizant and aware of what's going on a local level. We could talk more about that later because I don't want to take too much time away. I know Naswt still has some things he wants to talk about, but just to answer your question briefly, that's my perspective. I don't think like at this point it's Trump versus Biden. I'm not super excited to vote or not vote for either of them. Like at this point, I'm like, it's a wash up. Whatever happens, like I'm not. Me personally, I don't feel like I'm like, oh, we get Trump, okay, we get Biden. I guess that's cool too. Like I don't really. It's very little of a difference, quite frankly. So more, I'm thinking like, how can I influence what's going to happen right here in my town? What's going to happen right here in Newark? What's going to happen right here in Union? What's going to happen right here where we are? And you do that through your local elections.
Good. So now we have to move on to our health portion.
Yeah.
So we don't went an hour straight just with opening discussions and stuff.
Yeah. Now you could go ahead.
No, I agree with that statement.
Too.
All right, so someone asked a question. It says, as far as health is concerned. It said, is colloidal, first of all, they asked a few weeks back what are our thoughts or our experiences with colloidal silver. And then it grew into, is colloidal silver safe, or is there any evidence to suggest that it isn't? And I say, even if there was some evidence to say so, in my opinion, it would be negligible compared to all the experiences of the people that's been using it over the course of the past almost 100 years. We have to understand, like, health knowledge in our community comes from three sources. I'm talking about the African conscious community. Health knowledge comes from Dr. Africa, who was a specialist in herbs and strict veganism. Another source would be Dr. Sebi, he had something called the electric foods or alkaline diet. And the third most prominent source would be Queen Afua, and she taught us about the science of fasting. So all of us in this conscious community, we all pretty much have self-styled versions of thoughts and dietary regimens and protocols inspired by one of those three sources. So now, according to medical science, all three of those master teachers will be labeled as pseudo. And what it is that they're doing will be considered, according to medical science, anecdotal at most. So in medical science, they have something called a scientific methodology. So it's their own way of which they go about determining if something is real or if something is true and factual. And then there's anecdotes. Anecdotes is people's personal experiences, what they call it, they say entertaining stories of other people's personal experiences and stuff. So according to the medical profession, our ancestral healing arts will be considered not scientific but anecdotal. When we say anecdotal, we mean when our ancestors be like, the spirit was something about the plant, told me to pick it, I pick it, then it told me to put it in some hot water and make a tea, then make a tincture, then it told me how to make an essential oil out of it. That's all anecdotal, but when you look at it, this has been going on generations and generations, up to 100 to 200,000 years ago. So anecdotal evidence in the indigenous societies is, I guess, a soft science in its own right, because why would something stay around that long if it didn't work? Why was it working for all these people in all these situations? So we're finding out that something could be unscientific but yet true. Something could be true and unscientific at the same. It sounds like an oxymoron. So over in the West, the Western mind finds solace and consolation in the so-called scientific method. The traditionalists go and seek their ancestors' ways first, in addition to science. So we're not against science, we're not against medical knowledge, but we always consult with our ancestors in our tradition first. And whatever we can't find in our tradition and stuff, then we might consider some science or some medical science. So we're not just anti-everything. We're seeking a balance, because all of this is science in its own right. So what is the point to all of this? So the point, like, if someone has a negative experience with colloidal silver, understanding is not scientific. It would just be anecdotal. So when we're talking about the naturopathic thing with the herbs and the vitamins and the supplements, those in the medical profession said that's anecdotal. It's not scientific, because they haven't gotten on that journey to find out if it's scientific or not. First of all, because they're interested in the drug. They're not interested in cures. They're interested in patent cures. So they're not interested in really finding out if this stuff works or not, even though it's working amongst communities and indigenous people since time immemorial. So just because one person, it could be a prominent person that had a bad experience with one herb, it doesn't cancel out whether this thing works or not, or whether we should do it or not. For instance, so you have the allopathic doctors. They give you a prescription to go to the pharmacy to get your drug, and you have to follow the doses that they give to you. You cannot get that drug legally. You cannot get that drug without the permission and the prescription of that doctor, which is a healer in its own right. So now, ideally, in the naturopathic world, you're supposed to have a certified health practitioner who then gives you a healing protocol. Then you get your supplements. So it kind of mirrors the allopathic and the naturopathic sciences, kind of mirrors itself. Now, the wild card is the supplements and the naturopathic things are not regulated by any authority. So that means that the lay person could go and self-style their own regimen, their own dosages, which questionable dosages, which means the side effects could be unpredictable, and that makes you vulnerable to negative experiences with so-called natural substances. So the answer to that question is you need to seek out a certified health practitioner who, it doesn't have to be a doctor, it could be a naturopath, it could be a certified nutritionist, someone who has the knowledge or the technology to assess your particular condition of the body, so we can assess what dosage you might need, because this is coming down to dosages. Because when it comes to health, there's too many variables. There's no one thing that is going to fit and address everyone's concerns. So you have to take in consideration things like digestion. You have to take in consideration the state of your kidneys, and the state of your liver. So all of these things vary from one person to the next. So the answer is you got to seek a certified health professional to get an assessment of your level of health, and then you can find out what's the doses, because more might be bad. For certain people, less could be more. And these are things that shouldn't be taken casually. So if you was at a cookout or something and you found out your cousin was a doctor and stuff, you wouldn't expect your cousin to just assess your health right there casually over there. He's going to say, call the office, we're going to make an appointment then so I can further assess and do your situation justice. So treat the naturopathic sciences the same way. Treat the natural healers the same way, and go schedule yourself an appointment so that healer could give you all their attention so you can find out what's going on. So when you out here, you don't have to be guessing what herbs or what vitamins or what supplements to take or at what dosages. So we need to start respecting our arts and respecting our healers. And our healers need to be put up on the same prominent level as doctors are.
Yeah.
So our healers shouldn't be seen as bootleg doctors. So now, as far as colloidal silver is known to kill over 650 viruses, bacteria, and pathogens. What it's known to do is it's known to poke holes in the surface of a bacteria and go in and deactivate the functions of the virus. And how the technology of it, the colloidal silver, is so small, it has a micron. I forgot the size of the micron. What happens is it's so small it could penetrate the cell. And once it gets in and penetrates the cell, it could then deactivate viruses from happening and proliferating in the body. And far as dosages, like I just said, I don't want to get into dosages so more. So on the market, you'll see things that'll say 5 ppm, 25 ppm. That's parts per million. In my experience, 500 parts per million is when colloidal silver becomes therapeutic. Anything under that is not really therapeutic. Anything under that is for like children, babies, dogs, pets. But for full-grown adults having to deal with the toxicity in this world, you need to look out for 500 ppms. And you might have to take a certain amount of that several times a day with the onset of the illness. Remember, there's addressing a health concern, and then there's maintenance. So your maintenance and addressing the onset of an infection or something is two different things. So once again, I would have to defer seeking out a qualified health practitioner to decide what is the appropriate dosage for you. So we have a qualified health practitioner, which is Mintu Ra. We have, Life
Strength and Health in South Plainfield, New Jersey. Makra already put the link to their holistic center in the chat so that you guys can check out their website. They're on Facebook as well, and they have a podcast. And I know that they're still continuing to do online and virtual consultations, so you don't have to be local to work with them.
Mm-hmm. So I hope that answered the question.
I think so. Yeah, I think it answered the question absolutely. All right. So we want to see what's going on in here. So Imhotep says he thinks he's going to fly out to see you. He hasn't seen you in a while. Remember Imhotep from Naswt Temple?
Oh, okay.
Brother Jahi? Okay. Yeah. Okay. We remember you.
Yeah.
Baba Judy Ross says, interesting, people turn to alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, opioids, and cocaine to take away pain whether physical or mental, but that is considered anecdotal. But is that considered anecdotal or scientific?
Good one.
I don't like the way Biden feels entitled to the black vote. Me neither, but I gotta admit, like, I ain't a big fan that he said something. I mean, I knew he was gonna say some things. You know, him and Donald Trump, they some old men, like, they prone to gaffes. I knew it was gonna go down, but I was like, dang, bruh, already? And that's what you said this early in the game? I don't know. I don't think I can vote for you. So I might sit this one out, to be honest with you. But again, definitely gonna keep my eye out on the local elections and keeping my eye out for Dr. Akil Kalfani, who is running for local office.
That's right.
I think he's running for the state legislature here in New Jersey. So paying attention to his campaign and hoping that he does well. Dr. Kalfani is an initiate of African spirituality and a longtime supporter of the Temple of Anu. So those are the types of candidates that we have to see step up, and we have to support and get behind them when they do, right? Because they're the ones who, and I've seen a lot of videos and posts and things like that. Like Dr. Kalfani has been at protests. He was someplace yesterday live streaming from the front lines. I think he was someplace Thursday live streaming from the front lines. So this is someone who is out there with the people, has been out there for years. Like, he's not just doing it now because he's campaigning. He's been doing it for a long, long time. So if you have people in your local area who are like that, who've been out doing the work and decide finally, like, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring because I need to be involved in how these decisions are made, get behind those people, support those people. Hatet from the UK, keep up the work. Duaneta Shakara speaks.
While you look through that.
How about saying it is spiritual science because the different rituals of African spirituality repeat? So a ritual for Ogun has the same items and rhythms over and over again because it produces that energy.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem comes in with language. So it's kind of like with the naturopathic healers in the medical profession. So there's this war about language. So in the natural health field, you can't use the word like cure, and you can't use the word like treat. So those are legal terms now. So you could get sued, even though that's what you're doing. You're curing, you're treating. You can't use those words. So it becomes challenging when we use words that can be ambiguous, like science. He said spiritual science. So the word science means something different to them. So as far as they're concerned, there's no spiritual science. That's why we came up with the term in our community, kimoyo, is the principles of vitalism. So according to African traditional religions or cultures, we specialize in vitalism. So vitalism is that science that you're talking about. It's an approach to having a direct connection and relationship, a symbiotic relationship with the forces of nature, that we use culture and metaphor as a medium to tap and access that energy. Mm-hmm. So we say kimoyo these days.
Too. Ready, Set, Build expressions. Feel free to send me an email to templeofanu@gmail.com to talk about your short video on rebellion history. We can talk about that offline, so you can send us an email, and I'll be in touch with you. And then, did you want to talk about that earlier question about the we are not our ancestors? Did you feel like we covered that?
We could get into we could work ourselves into it. So I want to deal with quarantine, the George Floyd, and the end of the world prophecy.
Okay.
So many of our Christian and Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters are finding what they perceive as confirmation of their faith these days. So they're looking at what's going on, and they was like, the prophecy can't be denied. Revelations is talking about it. And they think they're seeing the exact carryover from what those texts or those scriptures are saying to what it is that we're going through now. Which is just weird. Like, I think like those scriptures were written thousands of years ago. Why wasn't it applying to the people thousands of years ago? Why is it applying for us nowadays? So it didn't apply to none of the people in between those times. And mind you, all those people from 2,000 years ago to 2020 all thought that they was living in the last times. All of them had enough curious,
Evidence, yeah.
curious correspondence is to believe that they, like, just 2 generations back, our grandparents thought they was living in the last time. I think in the Quran it said the end of the days is closer than the space between the 2 fingers. You'd be like, man, that's like tomorrow then. So we still waiting for the mystery God to come save us, and generations and generations of people are passing. So is it divine prophecy, revelation, or is it self-fulfilling prophecy? We can't deny the fact that we've grown up on movies like The Matrix, we've grown up on The Terminator, Armageddon, Judgment Day, The Day After. All these movies feed into the Judeo-Christian doomsday philosophy.
Yeah.
Or is it just the principle of mentalism? That's what we said, that's chemoyo, vitalism, what you give your energy to.
Yes.
Gives it life. So a man thinketh, so is it. It's in all the traditions anyway. So what you focus on actually becomes a physical state. So we've been programmed to expect the end of things, even if it's talking about our health. So we like, I'm gonna get old and I'm gonna die. We talk about geopolitical concerns, even conspiracy theories. People that think that they're not into the Bible and stuff, all their conspiracy theories is rooted in the Bible, because the Bible has predicted the end of the world and they predicted certain things. So conspiracy theorists who think they don't believe in it still are connected to that thing. So our perspective is there is no final end. There are just endings of cycles, endings of ways of doing things. And when the end of ways of doing things now opens the way for, some people say, the New World Order. And once again, that's something that connects to conspiracy theories in the Bible, but there's nothing inherently wrong with the idea of a New World Order. So it opens the way for New Order. Not no Illuminati, so you got to make that. Right. I think Naswt is an Illuminati. He used the word.
Because he used the hand
look
signal.
Like he did this hand, you saw how his hand signal did that real quick for like 2 seconds.
And he blinked 3 times in a row.
So after the old world it opens the way for what we call in our tradition, Smai Tawi.
Yes.
Smai Tawi is the unification of the lands. In ancient chemistry, you had the South and you had the North. So the unification of the South and the North under new leadership was called Smai Tawi. And that leader was called the Naswt, he who is of the North and he who is of the South. He is the Neb Smai Tawi, the unifier of the 2 lands. So we see this metaphor play out in the Judeo-Christian thing. They just have a different symbolism. So organically, when there's time for new order to come, there will always be social unrest, there will always be violence, and there will always be loose morals. Isn't that what we're going through now?
Yeah.
Everybody's claiming nobody's following the religion, nobody cares and stuff. They got wanton violence and stuff like that. So now watch how we could play that game if we wanted to be deceptive from a Kemetic perspective. If we wanted to be deceptive, we could go to the book of Kun Anu.
You gave it back to me.
It's known as the eloquent farmer or the eloquent peasant. But that's not the name of the book. It's really the book of Kun Anu. You know, when Europeans get into things, they always change the names to what they want it to be. So it's known as the tale of the eloquent peasant.
Kun Anu right there.
Now, our ancestors often wrote stories that encapsulated the political atmosphere of the times. So what stands out about one of these quotes, Hemet read it last week, and I think we all was taken aback by certain things that got said in the text. One of them being this. He who should set matters right makes things go wrong. He who should give breath chokes one who is on the ground. And he who should make breathing easier makes one gasp for air. So if we wanted to play that game, we'd be like, see, our ancestors knew about the George Floyd thing because he couldn't breathe. And so it's talking about someone having their foot on somebody's neck and they can't breathe and they should let them up and they didn't. So we could play that game and say our ancestors knew. And they projected from the past into the future so we could know about what's going on in this day and time. When in reality, that's what was going on in the Middle Kingdom. So in the Hermetica, there's also something called the prophecies of Hermes, and it gave this real in detail account of what it's going to look like when Kemet fell. It's talking about foreigners. It was talking about people not speaking the language, all the stuff that we see now. But yet, that was observations during the time of the Persian invasion. There were 6 invasions that went on in Kemet. So that was the social commentary for then. So it wasn't necessarily a prophecy for now. So understand what I'm saying. So they had, we constantly put our ancestors on this pedestal like they could do no wrong, when clearly the quotes from the Middle Kingdom tell us there was a lot going wrong in that day and time. So to answer that question, yes, we are our ancestors. We heard that saying, you are your ancestors. You are the one that you've been waiting for. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are our ancestors. Our ancestors are in our blood. It is our DNA coming from our father and our mother, generations going back. So you cannot not be your ancestors. So now watch this. So they were going through things like that in the Middle Kingdom. They were going through things like that during the Persian conquest. So here we are in America. So if we are our ancestors, we are the ones that we've been waiting for. Could it be the principle of reincarnation? Could it be that we're going through what it is that we're going through because there's still some closure from lessons unlearned from those other cycles that we're pulling in to this cycle? Could it be that the European represents a personification of something that was broken and unresolved within ourselves? So what is the lesson? Everybody's pissed off. What is the lesson? I'm tired of this. The lesson is a lesson of power. The lesson is a lesson about power. And if you cannot handle the power, then you don't get the power.
Yes.
You cannot handle the power, you don't deserve the power.
Right.
If you cannot seize the power, if you will not seize the power, then you do not deserve the power. So now we got to look in the mirror again. Are we ready for the power? Can we seize the power? Will we seize the power? Now it goes back to what Kwame Ture was saying last week, what I said. He said mobilization and organization. Can we effectively, strategically mobilize ourselves around a solid cause? And can we really organize ourselves around that solid cause? I would add 2 more onto it. I would say 3 is spiritualization. We're spiritualists. So we have to go see the Juju man and find out. We have to get fortified with our ancestors. We need to be fully on deck. We need to be brolic. We need to be African made people. You know how Italians be like, you made men. There's certain people you can't touch because they're initiated and such. Everybody needs to be on deck and be African made. So when you get right with your ancestors, find out what's going on and start, see if it's all aligned. And then number 4 is execution. When everything is online, you're mobilized and you're organized and connected with your source, then execute without fear. And if you're going to die, then you're going to die with something worth dying for. You're going to die for a worthy cause. A warrior go out on the porch and look at the sky and say, today is a good day to die. It is also says in the Art of War, said if you go to war expecting to survive the war, then it's best you don't go to war at all.
Yeah.
Because you don't need, in reality, do you want to fight a person that's not scared to die?
Right.
That's some serious energy. If they going in expecting to die, then there's nothing that's going to stop them till they achieve their goal. They have nothing to lose. So did that address that? We are our ancestors. Sure.
Yeah. We got Calvin said, we got some demons in this world carrying out these prophecies. To that I will respond that demons, we typically refer to them in the Temple of Anu as agents of Apep, and Apep does what Apep is supposed to do. Apep is designed to be the challenge to the light. That is Apep's purpose. Apep's purpose is to try to destroy Ra. Apep's purpose is to eat the light. That is what Apep is supposed to do. Apep is not doing anything wrong. Apep is doing what Apep was created to do. And it is up to Ra to be strong enough to withstand that challenge. It is up to Satesh to be in the solar bark with Ra to protect Ra from that challenge. It is up to Haru to be the warrior of the light that can restore Ma'at and make sure that the light sustains and maintains itself despite the challenge. It is up to Haru to be Ma'akaru and to be victorious against the challenge. So we cannot be worried about the challengers. We got to be the warriors who are going to defeat the challengers. So that's our charge. We can't be like, oh, let's stop them from challenging us. There ain't gonna never be no stop to APEP challenge. We said this last week and I'm gonna say it again. APEP don't sleep. APEP does not sleep. That energy does not sleep. So what are we sleeping for? We're like, can you please just give us a day off? No, there ain't no day off. If you are a warrior, you fight the fight until you are victorious. The challenge will keep coming. Steel sharpens steel. Right. So you cannot expect to get better and to get stronger if you don't have a worthy opponent upon which to sharpen yourself. Period. So that challenger, that demon, that dark energy is going to keep coming at us. But we need to be strong enough and good enough to be victorious. And so we are either doing the spiritual work and putting in the discipline and being the self-mastered ones that our energy and our spiritual warriors are ready to withstand and withhold and fight back the challenge, or not. And then in which case, chaos and darkness and demons and Apep and Isfet reign and take over the world. So that's up to us. Like, we either win or they win. But the challenge is they're not gonna rescind the challenge. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
So.
And everybody had off 2 months, so we supposed to be about that work.
Yeah.
Everybody got rested up. That's why people out there protesting. They
got sleep and everything. Like they're in the house, like they ready. You know, like if we were still working full-time schedules, people were like, I don't know if I could protest right now. Like I gotta go to work.
Exactly.
But people are like, I don't, you know, my job ain't even open yet. I got time to be in these streets. So it's amazing how, like, you know, just all things converge to make this time and this moment the right moment. And it still goes back to, we was talking about all the way back at the beginning of the year, we talked about 2020 being the year of the visionary and the opportunity for us to restore Ma'at on a grand scale, the opportunity for us to be victorious and Ma'akru on a grand scale, the opportunity for us to accomplish and achieve things on a grander scale, right? And that reality has not changed just because coronavirus happened, just because these protests are happening. If anything, all the things that are happening is just proof that the spiritual work that we do now, the energy we put into the universe, the intensity of that energy, the intentions of that energy, the specificity of that energy, the work is potent. And whether we take advantage of that potency or not is on us. So if we let the moment pass and then the potency is lost, that's our fault. But we have the capacity right now to make great change and great shift in the universe, in the world, and in ourselves, in our homes, in our lives. So what do we choose to do with the potency and the power and the responsibility that we have been given? That's on no one else. That's on us. It's our choice.
And our culture is our key. Someone said that they're performing rituals. Someone said George Floyd's death was a ritual. And that gets into the conspiracy theory thing. You know, so we have a portion of our people believe in biblical prophecies, a portion of our people believe that all of this is like some type of voodoo ritual. And it's right. It's correct. I always want to put it in context. So once again, I don't believe that cop went out and did a specific ritual. He did what he did in a ritualistic manner. Understand that, remember, everything proceeds and condenses from the invisible into the visible. We say the deities exist within us as us. So therefore, we have what you call faculties or archetypes in our consciousness. So therefore, we are living a ritual. So everything that we do with mindfulness becomes a ritual. Yes. So in that sense, yes, it's voodoo, but not necessarily voodoo going to the altar to do some things. Right. So they was talking about the posture of the officer that had the foot on the neck. Some people was comparing it to Colin Kaepernick bending a knee. Some was comparing it to the angel Michael slaying a dragon. So in this sense, George Floyd was the dragon that the so-called cop had to slay. So that's why they're saying it's voodoo. So they was like, this person is performing a ritual, a ritualistic slaughter of what he perceives to be a dragon. So now, that's why I say culture is the key. So now that if that was to be true, that person is using their metaphor and their mythology to make moves in the world. Because on our side, George Floyd ain't no dragon that needed to be slayed. So George Floyd might have not knew what his spiritual resources were for him to be the dragon with his foot on the neck. So that's what it is. So like, so are you Heru? Who slayed Apep? So we're clear on what Apep is and how Apep manifests in the world, but what deities will embody you?
Right.
What deity that you need, what myth that you need to personify when you're out there protesting?
Right. Yeah.
So, because it like so in that sense, it's all a ritual. Since it's all archetypes in our psyche, every act that we do with mindfulness is ritual. So we have to return to our culture as a form of a template on how that we're gonna draw down our energies and move forth into the world. Someone asked, what are our thoughts on voodoo? I just said it. So voodoo is everything. Everything is voodoo. Voodoo is energy. Voodoo is spirit. But we tend to use the term kimoyo. Like I said, it's the principle of vitalism. We use kimoyo because kimoyo is not designated to any one culture in Africa. We use it as a term to designate all traditional African religions without specifying any one. So kimoyo is a direct correspondence with voodoo. Voodoo is a specific cultural manifestation of Benin in Nigeria and as well as Haiti. That's a whole system, that's a whole structure that needs to be respected. So when you say that word voodoo, it's going to invoke pictures of Haiti or Benin. But we understand we're still talking about kimoyo. So that same thing is the principle of mentalism in the Kemetic tradition when we say all is mind. The universe is mental. Some say the all is consciousness. The universe is consciousness. The all is spirit. The universe is spirit. So how does voodoo get its bad reputation? How do y'all think voodoo got its bad reputation? Who's responsible for that?
I guess more so by putting hexes and curses on people.
Okay, he said by putting hexes and curses. Like, where do they get that from? Y'all can answer that too.
Christianity.
He said from Christianity. Where did voodoo get its bad reputation from? Anybody else?
Nobody's answered it yet, but let's see.
Were they just afraid that because they had that type of power, it became its
Somebody was afraid.
negative
Who's that?
connotation? White folks.
White folks.
Yeah, someone at any point, I think that's Kaiko on YouTube said the white folks that were defeated in Haiti, that's where they created the bad impression of, so we got Hollywood,
Yeah,
Europeans.
They got it. Hollywood, Europeans and Hollywood. It's all
Europeans in Hollywood.
So those movies back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, so they had this negative impression of voodoo. They was thinking Africans were having orgies with snakes and things like that. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, that's not the only source of the negative reputation of voodoo. In my experience, I've come across people that told me their negative experiences. Bob Heru's come across people that's come to them reporting the negative things that is happening in that tradition. So it's not just the white folks. It's a form of black on black spiritual crime that's going on in some of these spiritual systems. So that to say I'm not casting aspersions on the voodoo or Ifa, because I study those things just as much as I study the Kemetic tradition. Mm-hmm. In fact, like our most recent ancestry comes from Nigeria, so we all got that voodoo in our blood one way or another, but we have to examine what it is. So when I'm studying Ifa, when I'm studying voodoo, it actually helps me understand what I'm looking at when I'm looking at the Kemetic tradition, because many times the people that study the Kemetic tradition, they tend to look at the Judeo-Christian and the Arabic correspondences. They go out another direction looking for correspondences to understand Kemet. Some even go into the Hindu and the Chinese directions to try to understand Kemet. I go to the interior of Africa and I look at voodoo, I look at Ifa, and I can make correspondences of what it is. So the conclusions I come up with, those religions are all, kimoyo is about having a living relationship with your ancestors and your spirit guides and the deities, and having a symbiotic relationship with these things and being in harmony with these things. That's the whole of it. So now we got some irresponsible practitioners of these science that has nothing to do with it, actually voodoo or Ifa, because I read the Odu Ifa, I read the corpus, I read the text, and these bad things that I hear about what people are doing is not in the text. The
Right.
Odu Ifa reads just like the Hosea in any of the Seba'it, the instruction text of Kemet. So that's just as the same far as the Kemetic tradition. So so-called sorcery to voodoo is the same as poor character to Kemet. In the Kemetic tradition, we have this Ma'at philosophy. We say we've deified the Ma'at philosophy. We venerated the Ma'at philosophy, right? And we got them 42 things, and we read the Seba'it, we read the text that tells you what it is Ma'at and what's not Ma'at. Yet, we still have irresponsible practitioners that's claiming to be Kemetic. So it would be wrong to say, don't follow the Kemetic tradition, because I know 5 Kemites that's just foul. So leave that alone. You see the same thing happen. So you have irresponsible people practicing the Kimoyo or voodoo that gives it a bad name, even though what it says in there says nothing about the things that they're doing. So to go to Kemet, for example, the book of Knowing the Evolutions of Ra and Overcoming Apep, they said they had something, a part of it called the 4 Deeds of Ra. And it said, I made every person to like his or her fellow, and I did not command them to do evil. It was their own hearts and minds that caused them to disobey what I commanded. That's the essence of what we're talking about with voodoo and Kemet. So if it's not dealing with having a righteous symbiotic relationship with your ancestors, the spiritual guides, and the Orishas, the Netadru, and the forces of nature, then it's not true voodoo. It is not true Ma'at. So with that being said, we all have to be better. Ifa has to be better. Kemet has to be better. Voodoo has to be better. All our reputations could afford and to be cleaned up and upgraded, so we could channel now those righteous, powerful spirits and not them wicked, low-level mischief-causing spirits. In our tradition, it says, may your name, meaning your reputation, be the embodiment of every good law. So we have a charge as Kemites, we have a charge as Ifa followers and voodoo followers to be the embodiment of every good law. So we are representing our system, so we have to be better examples. So when you hear the word Ifa, voodoo, or Kemet, it's not invoking anything negative,
right,
just because a handful of cats just was off code. Kind of like what we were saying with the anecdotal evidence. Just because one person, a prominent person, might have got sick off of colloidal silver, don't mean you throw the whole thing away just because one person got sick. We have to investigate how they got sick. So each person, why they do evil, is a whole study in of itself.
yeah.
So the tradition itself is a whole study. So you always, the tradition itself, it speaks for itself. So it's vindicated and exonerated by how each one of these texts reads. So now the people trying to do it is a whole different thing. So the goal of all of us in spiritual system is try to lessen our contradictions. Mm-hmm. No one can be perfect, but we have to lessen our contradictions. So the masses amongst us have the least contradictions. Doesn't mean you have no contradictions. It's just amongst the masses you might have the least contradictions. This determines if you're qualified to be in that lead position.
That's that character development that we've been talking about.
Iwa Pele.
Exactly.
And Ked Nefer. And good characters, Ked Nefer and Sesh Middle.
Voodoo, amongst all the African life systems, has been infiltrated by pseudo-spiritualists. We must view the way of life differently from the tradition, as the tradition is what's been traded in various places. People now know it's the way to be spiritual, where people were only exploiting it who only want to make money. They are here in the UK copying other people's work and claiming to be spiritualists. I feel like that happens in spirituality, period. Like, to some degree, that's part of the challenge as far as like the commodification of our spiritual systems, because people can go out, we had these traditions that were secret traditions. They were mystery to the traditions, and in order to have access to the power and the magic of the tradition, you had to qualify first through personal through character. Like, you had to prove that you were Ma'at. You had to prove that you had the character, and that you had that you were a person who was worthy, that you were chosen by Neter, that you were devoted to the Neteru. So So you didn't get access to the books, you didn't get access to the tools until you first prove yourself. And now anybody could go on Amazon and buy any book about. I've seen books about voodoo and hoodoo. I've seen books about Ifa. I've seen books about the Kemetic tradition. I purchased books about all those things. I purchased juju books and things like that. So anybody can go out and buy a book that tells them how to do spells and then go do spells. And there's no requirement to qualify whether or not that person is going to use that spell for good or for evil. So the things that our traditions used to have in place as far as like gatekeeper systems are all gone. And there's a good and a bad to that, because I recognize the benefit by having African spiritual systems more accessible and well known to those of us in the Americas and around in the diaspora who want to reclaim their African sense of self and want to find a sense of resonance with African culture and want to get back to that true way of living and that true way of being and self. And so that accessibility is important and valuable to us, but that accessibility also comes with the price of the commodification of our culture. Right. And so ultimately that's the balance that we have to maintain. Is like, how do we and are we able to make sure that people qualify before they get these certain, like, if somebody could just read a book and be like, nah, I'm a priestess. Like, it's no, you know what I'm saying? Like, who's the gatekeepers? Who stops that from happening? And how do you like, this is part of what's causing what you said before about Baba, and people telling Baba and you that they've had poor experiences. Part of that is caused by the fact that there's not necessarily a system in place to stop someone from claiming to be a teacher or to be qualified for something that they're not necessarily qualified for, and then they're out in the world damaging others. But there's also a lot of good that's coming from our access to African culture too. So it's not all bad, but it's not all good. There's two ways to see it, and certainly we just have to keep all of that in mind. So at the end of the day, we continue to advocate for initiation into a proper spiritual house, right? And if the Kemetic,
where they emphasize good character first.
Right.
Not power. Good character over power first.
Right.
Power, empowerment in the hands of people that have poor character is dangerous.
Yes.
And that's what led to the reputations these systems have now.
Right.
It wasn't the systems itself, it was the poor character of even, I guess, it was some breakdown in the gatekeeping system.
Yeah. So you have teachers who don't have good character, and therefore they don't request that their students have good character, or they overlook poor character traits in their students, and then their students run amok and things like that. So, but initiation still is supposed to be the process through which the gatekeeping happens. So evaluate the teacher, evaluate the house, determine if they have the good character, and determine if they are upholding the standard. And then if they are, and they can be trusted, and they're determined to be worthy, then submit yourself to go through the initiation process so that you may be brought up to be worthy of carrying the power of that legacy and of that tradition, and of carrying the secrets of that tradition and things like that. So that is the journey that we believe that each African person must take, right?
That's right.
All things can be used for good or bad.
That's right.
Africans have been frightened away from our own spiritual systems by Christianity. Voodoo got its bad reputation because of ignorance. Chuck D said it took having no sports distractions or anything else for the world to see what's been happening to black people.
That's right.
With each victory comes a greater level of strength, refinement, and self-mastery, too. Check the comparisons of the qualifications to those using spiritual rituals who are not qualified, just like we check the qualifications of law enforcement, politicians, and etc. Yeah, it's the people, not the system or the weapon, too. And then this comment, I should share my gratitude for how you all addressed the attack on Kemetic temples a few months ago. It was truly masterful example, one that should teach and humble us all. Dua Ashe. Yeah, Dua Shakara speaks. All right, so I guess that's it. We've been on for quite some time.
Do you think we earned at least a $5 donation?
I think so. I think we all...
Almost 2 hours. We should earn at least $5.
Yeah, Yeah, so we thank you in advance for those of you who feel moved to make a donation in an effort to show reciprocity to the energy that we give today and every Sunday for the work that we're doing to support you all and to support the community and to bring the teachings out into the world. Those of you who would like to and are able to make a donation can do so on Cash App, $ Temple of Anu, or on PayPal, templeofanu@gmail.com. Your donations are greatly appreciated. Again, they contribute to us continuing to do our work as a temple and as a spiritual community and our ability to further our mission. And that's, really important. We want to be around not just for the rest of our generation, but for generations to come. And so, money is one of the energetic ways that your support helps us to continue to be around, right? It's money is a form of energy and a demonstration of reciprocity for the energy that we've given you guys here. And those of you who cannot make a donation, that's okay too, because we're going to still be here every Sunday as we always are, or as we have been over the last couple of weeks. We will be back here next Sunday at 1 p.m. for our regularly scheduled communion, live streaming again both on Facebook and on YouTube at the same time. So next Sunday at 1 p.m. for communion, and then in 2 weeks after that for the Crook and the Flail.
Talking about the orientation again next Saturday.
Yep, so orientation for First Down Kemet. We are having a second one this coming Saturday in the afternoon. If you would like to be a part of that orientation, please send us an email to templeofanu@gmail.com and we'll make sure you get the Zoom link information so that you can be a part of that. It'll be a good opportunity for you to find out more about the course topics and to have your questions answered about what you can expect to learn and why it is that it's valuable for you to take First Down Kemet at this time if you are a spiritual seeker or one who wants to deepen your presence and understanding in the Kemetic tradition at this time. And lastly, another shout out for the Netta Relationships online workshop that is taking place on Saturday, August 8th, so 8/8/20, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It is a 100% fully online workshop, so anyone anywhere can take the workshop. It is comprehensive conversation about the energy of Sekhmet, which I really feel is a necessary energy for us to talk about at this time. We need to be prepared to tear down structures and to destroy things that no longer serve us. We need to be prepared to rebuild and to heal. We need to be prepared to be motivated and driven to make things happen in this world for ourselves personally and for our, for the global African village. And we need that energy of Sekhmet in right measure at this time. So I'm really looking forward to getting into that deep conversation about how her energy can benefit us and how we can invoke that force to our highest and best good. And so check out the event page that's on Facebook for the Netta Relationships for more information. And we will see you guys next Sunday. All right, Shami Matap.